have one of the most amazing people. And this is our schedules as moms and entrepreneurs and everything else that we're doing just finally matched up. So we're here. And so we're going to kind of wing this episode a little bit. And I'm going to have Danielle share, but I kind of want to tell the audience a little bit about our serendipitous encounter that we had to start this relationship. And I can't even tell you how many years ago it was now. It's been in the last decade, somewhere along in the early part of the decade, like 10 years ago, maybe now.
Yeah, like 8 years, maybe.
8 years. Yeah. Gosh, has it been that long? Like, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but it was. And the reason I really thought about this is the other day, I was actually driving down by the place where we had met. In a roundabout way, I was doing something else, and I was like, oh my gosh, if I just go a couple blocks, there's that restaurant that we met at. And what happened is Danielle was living here in Arizona and I live here in Arizona. And so we were going to a networking event. We had no idea about the networking event. Neither one of us, I don't think either one of us had a clue what we were walking into. And we get in there and the event's really cool, but most of the women in there were way older than us. And I'm way older than Danielle, but they were way older than me. And so we get in there and I'm like, yeah, this is not maybe necessarily the age group that I want to network with, but it was cool. I was there. I'd already paid for it. I was like, I'm going to have the lunch. And then I sat down and I'm like, I'm going to sit down by this person over here because she looks closer to my age than anybody else. That's really what I thought. And we sat down, and I think for like the whole 2 hours of the networking event, we just chatted and talked. And after that, it was just like this constant conversation that we've always had. We don't talk to each other on a consistent basis, but it's one of those things like when we're together, it's like we've never been apart type thing. Mm-hmm. So it was just always really cool how I met Danielle and where I met her in her journey, because it was very kind of early on, but not really early on in her healing journey. She had been going through a lot of things herself and making these huge transitions, and she'll share with you guys in a little bit how that went. But that's kind of how Danielle and I met. And so I always say it was very serendipitous. She's amazing at breath work, amazing at meditation. So, of course, I pushed her for a while. I was like, you got to start teaching this. And then when she did, yeah, I was like the first one to sign up. And so we've just had this amazing journey together. And now she's a mama and doing all kinds of things. I can't even keep track of what she's doing at this point or where she's at in the world. Like, that's the hardest thing, is to nail down where she is in the world. So, Danielle, I do welcome you. I am so blessed to have you in my life and all the things that we've done together. So share with our audience who you are, what you're doing, all the things. So catch us all up.
Of course, I'm happy to be here. And this is like the first intentional conversation I've had around my story. And since my story took a very dark turn 18 months ago. So yeah, I was excited to be here and to share. Yeah, I think like the most important place maybe to start, we're talking about healing, right? Healing journey. Yeah.
Your healing journey. Yeah.
Oh, I really hold this belief that when we're all young, that we have these, we're drawn to these paths. We're drawn to seeing things a certain way, and really we're like very intelligent when we're young, right? And so I remember when I was young, I was always just like so fascinated with people and why people are happy and why they're sad and why they suffer and why they hurt and why they hurt each other. And I remember we would be like driving in, my mom's car. I'm in the back seat and it's night, and I would just like, we would be driving through town. I would just like look into houses, and I would be like, not like in a creepy way, I was in the car, but I'd be like, I wonder if they're happy in there. I wonder if the people in that home are happy. And I also, when I was young, I had access to a lot of suffering in my family line, physically, a lot of physical suffering. So my grandmother who raised me passed when I was very young. My grandfather passed shortly after, cancers. And then my paternal line, there was a lot of addiction and substance abuse and overdoses and just a lot. Like, we all have things in our family, right? So I was the golden girl. I was like the one that was going to do everything perfect. I had to be perfect at everything. And I wouldn't I was just so very hard on myself as a young adult, and so very, I needed to be the best at everything. So that's how I feel like we all come to our healing journey, and God or the universe just kind of like gives us this opportunity to just wake up, right? And just pull the veil right off. Like, why is my life going this way? And for me, growing up, I was also very into horses, cowgirl. I had a whole career in horse racing, and I was deep in the horse racing world. And I just like was kind of, I had a bunch of like tooth stuff. I had migraines. I was chronically inflamed, and really bad relationships with men, like very unhealthy, lots of cheating things. I was just like kind of unhappy in certain areas. I was like, well, let me look at this. Like, is there another way I could be seeing myself and seeing what's possible for myself in my life?
Mhm.
And that question, anytime someone asks that question, is there another way? Is there a different way I could see myself or my life? It just like creates this opening for support to come through and tools and really a journey. Like, I think of it now as like a quest. Like, we all go on these quests, and there are different things that are important for you at different times. For me in 2010, when I started, it was fitness. So I needed to heal my body image because I had a lot of like negative self-talk around my body and how muscular I was, like in my femininity. So that's where I went first, right? So I went deep into physical fitness, fitness competitions, fitness modeling, fitness, all of these things. And the whole time, as I was getting these codes and seeing results, I was like, I really want to speak about this. I really want to help people see, specifically women, see that there are other ways, actually. Like, if you've had that same question, it's true. Like, what your heart is saying is true. There are other ways to go through this life where you can actually feel way better than what they're telling us we can feel. So I just, started to create experiences and environments that would foster that when it came to fitness and wellness. Um, that was 2010. And, as I went the last and really started offering it, I think in 2015, was when I did my first boot camp. So, 9 years ago. And I've just kept adding tools to my toolbox as I have dove within my own being, dove within my own shame and trauma and shadow, and learned to just sit with it and be with it, make friends with it, have tea with it, and use it as a vehicle for me to experience more and more empowerment and vitality. So right now, my life is this very interesting dance, right? I have all of these tools: breath work, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, journaling, um, healthy eating, herbs, and if it's holistic, you name it, I've been down that rabbit hole, okay? And on the other end, I'm still experiencing the trauma of my family line. My sister passed of cancer last year, very traumatically. My dad just got diagnosed with cancer last week. And it's like I'm being met with the deepest of dualities and what's possible here.
Mhm.
And I'm a student of that right now. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just going slow enough to where I won't miss the little nuggets that this time has for me right now, being a new mom, finding this incredible amount of peace within myself amongst all of the hard things around me, and remaining open to what is in store and how I can be of service for the highest good. And it's actually looking a lot different than what I thought it was going to. And I'm just excited for what's coming now. I'm like feeling very like soldier-esque, like very like, oh, like we're mounting on our horses and here we go kind of thing. So that's me. That's it. That's my healing journey, and I'm still on it. It's never
Awesome. And I love that because every time I think of Danielle, I honestly do. And it's so wonderful that you have the picture in the background of the horses because I always see, every time I picture you, I just see you on a horse and you're like charging just headstrong right into battle on everything you do. And that was one of the things that very much like her aura, her energy when we first met, because I know what period we were probably about that year 8 ago when you were talking about your story. I guess I was thinking like, okay, that's kind of about where I met you. And the interesting thing is you were still like dealing with things very head on, but how you deal with them now and how you dealt with them then, there is a huge difference in that I've been able to see throughout this journey. And it's been so beautiful to see that dance that you have experienced. And so I hope our listeners understand that this, I loved how you said it's a quest, because this is, I'm like, healing doesn't really ever stop. If it does, then you've stopped it. And I would want to know why, because when you're on this healing journey, you can't, at least I can't stop mine because it keeps coming. And I don't want to stop it because like you said, you still are dealing with certain things with your lineage, with, where you are. You got to keep dealing with the dance and the quest. So I always picture you like, on with your like sword, just like charging right into battle. And I love it. So
Yeah.
awesome. So you kind of hinted a little bit about like how this has played out with the physical aspect, like doing all the fitness and things like that in your business. But there's been a lot of other things that you've done in your business. I've hinted to like the meditation and stuff. But one of the cool things that I really want to kind of touch on is, and this is something I always really had a passion to do, but then I ended up having kids and a whole lot of other things come up. So it's not been part of my journey yet. It will be eventually. But you've done a lot of like creating environments for women, especially in other countries. So I want you to talk about how all of this has integrated, your journey is integrated not only in your business, but in the lives of all these other women that you've taken on these experiences.
Yeah. So, one helpful reframe for me lately is I've stopped using healing as much and I've started saying expansion,
Mhm.
because it feels like the journey, like eventually we're not as attached to our own pain and we've transmuted a lot of it. And then we're just kind of with the natural flow and expansion that's happening on the planet. And so that felt kind of helpful to say really quickly. And the retreats are definitely a reflection of that now. I am, yeah, 40 retreats deep at this point. And I started, very domestic, very small scale, but I was always like, yeah, there is real power in us being together and sitting down and practicing. And I want everybody to know, like, I've probably sat for like over 5,000 hours of my own mind and my own heart at this point, like, and it's always going to keep going. And I notice, like, when I'm sitting to meditate or do yoga or pray, whatever, journal together, dance together, go on a hike together with women who are on a similar path to me, that everything I'm putting into motion into my life gets amplified. And that's what the retreats are. They are this pause from routine and from comfort to be very present for what's happening with you on your journey. And I had done probably retreats for probably like 5 or 6 years or 7, I don't know, time. But before I met my current partner in international travel, and her name is Lindsay. And she came to one of my Sedona retreats, and she had a decade of experience leading retreats all over the world. And I was like, how do we take this global? Like, how can we take people? Because I had traveled internationally myself and I knew how potent that was. And I was like, the work plus being in another country, like, let's go. And so linking up with her in 2019 was pretty cool. And since then, we've just been like retreat after retreat after retreat. We've done probably 10 international retreats. And, what happens is that there's just this like this field that gets created in the group. And anybody that's traveled with us is going to know, because you contribute to the field. This isn't like Danielle Bryan, the knower of all, like blessing you all with something. It's like, no, everybody is coming to contribute something. Hard shit, good shit, bad shit, ugly shit, beautiful shit, anything. It's all needed, because what happens is when we're all there together, sitting in circle, meditating, going through different types of work, you get to really square your shoulders to what's going on with you. Because I don't know what's best for you. I don't know what's next for your path. I can only help you let that bubble up within yourself and feel safe enough to say yes to what your heart is calling you to. That is my only job. And, at the retreats, we're just seeing that, when we are together doing this, there's just a lot of transformation that's possible. We are alive in times where literal miracles, we can access them. And, I am so convinced that we're going to see them more and more with our very eyes. We're going to be a part of them. And that's kind of my goal with the retreats, is to just keep making them more and more magical and more real. How often do you step into a spiritual gathering or community and it's like everybody's so like aloof and in the fifth dimension that like they're not even here anymore? It's like, no, we need to be here too. Like,
Right.
we're doing all of this so that we can be better here, and we can be anywhere. Like, look at Christ. Like, Christ wasn't like hanging out in, the palace by himself. He was literally with everybody.
Right.
Like, so that's my whole thing with the retreats too, is like, let's go out there, be in the world, honor the lands, honor the cultures, honor the people, and learn from each other. And learn from ourselves too, because there's a lot of wisdom in
Yeah.
there.
And I love that. And I'm going to kind of interject part of my story here, because I traveled internationally for like 15 years straight, and I did it more on the humanitarian, like aid side. And it was always, we were going in to be the hero, to save the day, to save the people, to, that whole rigmarole. And it was a joyful experience at the time. But when I stepped away from it, I realized that it didn't have what you were talking about. It didn't have that magical piece to it of providing a space. And I hope our listeners really listen to that, because when you go on this quest to heal, to transform, and all these things, how it happens is completely up to you. It has nothing to do with the coach, the trainer, anybody else, the leader. It has nothing to do with them. They're there to provide a space for you. That's really honestly all our jobs are, is to provide that space. And what happens on that journey is totally unique to everybody. And there are spaces, and I was in that space, and I was one of those leaders that I made sure the experience happened exactly how I wanted it to happen, the way I wanted it to happen. You did exactly what I told you to do and nothing else, because I wanted it my way. Ego, aha, playing in that space. And I loved that when I met you, and I have yet to experience that, and I know why I have yet to experience that. We may have to talk about that off camera, but I completely understand it now with something you just said. But it was that idea that you create this space of, and every woman I have ever spoken to that has attended one of your events, that they all say the same thing. I was just given this space, this container to just be and go on my own journey. And there was no expectations. There was no interjections that anything was supposed to happen. It happened how it was supposed to. And that was the biggest transformation that most of them had, was they were free to do that. And so I commend you on that, because so many times we can get wrapped up in the outcomes, and outcomes are completely individual. They're going to happen how they're going to happen. So I kudos to you for that. So I love that. And that was one of the things that truly intrigued me about Danielle, was when I first met her, and I knew where she was on her journey at the time, that was kind of, in some instances and in some spaces, that was really hard for you to let that control go, to let to release that. And when I saw her come in and step into that, it was such this beautiful experience, because I was like, oh my gosh, like everybody that enters her space, and I've been in her containers for many, many years, that everybody that comes in there, we're all like, when we leave, we're all like, oh wow, there was no pressure put on you. There was nothing. And so that is that beautiful dance that we play, because we live in such a society where women, unfortunately, have so many pressures that are outside. They're not
Mhm.
ours, and they're pushing us in so many directions, and we're trying to do this dance, and most of the time we can't hold up under all of that pressure. And so, in Danielle's journey that I've seen and been able to experience, I've seen her be able to come from having to have a little bit of that control in certain areas of her life, to really releasing that. And especially with your family dynamics that you
Mhm.
had, and that journey of um, healing from loss and healing from grief, and you're still in that process, I know. And so share with us, like, how the tools that, because I really want our listeners to understand some of the tools that you personally use, that they may want to experience or may want to try. What are some of the tools that are like your go-to tools when those days are hard? Like, what is those things that really, like, set the days apart, because you use those tools, pretty religiously?
Mhm. So therapy, get a good therapist, okay? Especially if you're going through loss, like that is very helpful.
Yeah.
I don't see my therapist enough. Yeah, like for me, it's been pouring into relationships where I feel safe expressing and sharing what's going on in my heart, and having a safe place where I can grieve or be angry or be whatever I'm going to be. And it's also been cultivating safety within myself, feeling that. How
Mm.
many women are afraid to feel sad, are afraid to feel their grief, are afraid to feel rage? And so the sitting with myself over the years has been this establishment of safety within self, which is what I would like. And I feel like I'm helping others do in a way, is like, can I feel safe to like rewrite how this is living in me? Because things happen and we decide the meaning that we give them, and like losing my sister, that like stopped me in my tracks, and I had to let go of everything. I had to let go of all of my work. And I'm continuing to just unravel things because I'm being shown what's really most important. It's actually most important. And we don't know until we're given an opportunity to know something new. So the tools are learning, continuing to learn, knowing that we don't know shit about the way this is set up, about the way the whole thing is playing out, and that's okay. But there are things we can learn, that when we get information about the way this reality is built and set up, that it is meant to up level us and up level our awareness and up level how we see ourselves and the role we play, how we see our pain, how we see our trauma, how we see our gifts. It's literally like Super Mario out here. And if we
Great.
could all just sit down and watch Super Mario and realize you are Mario, like you are the Mario of your life. And like the challenges within each challenge, there is a nugget of wisdom and love and growth for you to calibrate you back towards your innate natural self.
Mm.
The trickery on the planet, what it wants to do is pull people away from themselves, so they won't know that. So they'll rely on sources of information outside to make all your decisions, right? But once you're like, wait, like that feels a little backwards, and then there's just like this slow calibration back, you start to get people around you that are on that path. You can say certain things around, you feel safe, you start to sit with yourself, you let yourself cry, you let yourself be a full human. That's my practice. I let myself be messy, but I also let myself be in my zones of genius. And I'm not afraid of those parts of myself anymore and letting them out. And that's what I wish for all women. Like, let yourself be fully you while you're here. And if we don't figure it out this go around, that's fine, because we're probably coming back, and there's a lot to learn while we're here.
Yeah. And I love that component because when you were talking about sitting with yourself, I remember and I don't remember which class you were teaching, but it was one of the classes I've taken from you. And I think it was a meditation because I was sitting in a closet with a candle and you were like, sit with yourself for like 10 minutes. And any thought that comes to your brain, just tell it to go away. And it was like a practice of, and I had never sat that long with just myself. I'm not joking with the audience because at the time I had little boys and my oldest daughter was not even in college yet. Husband, we were living in this really tiny house and I had to lock myself behind two closed doors, literally lock the bedroom door, lock the bathroom door, and go into my closet so that I could get nobody wanting to interrupt me for 10 minutes. I couldn't even go 10 minutes without somebody wanting mom. And to sit there in that, I was like, oh my gosh. And then I remember like I worked myself up to like 50 minutes and I had to train my family not to
Mhm.
interrupt me for an hour so that I could sit with myself because I I love that you talked about sitting with yourself brought safety because
Mhm.
that's for me what it really brought was like, hey, I am safe within myself. I need safety in other people too at times, but I really need to feel it here in myself. And I just remember that. And so sometimes I still crawl in my closet and I just want to sit like with myself. And so I always find, I always think just laugh in my head when people are like, oh, I can't sit with myself. And I'm like, well, you're probably the person who needs to be sitting with yourself because I remember being there and I remember being that. So thank you for sharing that with us because I think sometimes we think, oh, we have to do these morning rituals the way that so and so does it, or we have to do these morning practices and we have to have these things. And we have to wake up at 5 o'clock and da da da. And sometimes it's messy. Like
Mhm.
I'm in a messy stage of things right now with some stuff. I'm like, it's really messy. Like if anybody asks me like how my day's going, if it's not written down, it ain't happening because it's so messy right now. There's so many things, but I'm okay with that. But if you
Yeah.
asked me that like 5 or 6 years ago, I would not have been okay with it because
Mhm.
I couldn't be okay in that. I wasn't safe in that space, but now I am. So thank you for sharing that with us. One of the things that I love about Danielle, I love her a lot. You guys can probably tell, but she became a new mama to this beautiful. He's so cute. This little beautiful boy, and share like how you just stepping into motherhood has really been a part of your journey and a part of like a lot of the transition that's happening right now because you're in the thick of being a mama.
Yeah, I mean, it was like the ultimate test of if I was gonna walk my talk when I got pregnant. I have, still do have almost like a unhelpful distrust of the modern medical system. Like I could probably do some work around loosening my rage towards them. So within that rage, I was like, I am doing this completely away from the medical system. Like, I don't want them involved at all. So, like, my up level really started when I got pregnant. And it was like, okay, Danielle, you really gonna like put your money where your mouth is and like do this whole wild pregnancy thing and trust, so we did, and I'm very grateful for a supportive partner who he just like really let me kind of lead that, and he was just there for me when I was questioning it because of course I was going to question it. Like we are so conditioned to place so much power, especially around birth, in the hands of a doctor. And yeah, so it was like trust. Can I trust myself? Can I trust my inner knowing that this baby is healthy? My body knows how to grow a human. It's literally designed for it.
Right.
And that I have done enough work, like with my nutrition, with movement, with hydration, with minerals leading up to it. Right. I don't think that everybody maybe should do, I'm not saying everybody have a wild pregnancy and don't see a doctor. I'm saying like, if you are holding your health to a certain standard and you take a certain standard of care of your body, that yeah, it knows how to do things. It knows how to heal. It knows how to have babies. It knows how to do all sorts of things.
Mhm.
I'm still convinced that we can grow back teeth again. So I'm working on that one. But yeah, so with like, and then came with my birth, having a home birth and like doing it just the way that we did it. And um, losing my sister 3 months into being a new mom. And, it was a hard transition for me because I was a wild filly out there for 34 years. You know this. I was just traveling the world and doing whatever I wanted. And, I had a full hour in the morning for breath work and cacao and journaling, and I could light a candle, and like a baby comes and you can't do any of that.
Mhm.
So again, when the baby comes and it's like, all right, what is the most important thing? It's not that the practice is perfect and that I have my perfect hour set aside to do this. It's that I actually just show up.
Right.
So the cool thing about my son, Cairo, is that I did breath work every day I was pregnant. And I've done breath work almost pretty much every day since he's been here, and he has been a part of it.
Mhm.
So, um, either he's nursing and falling asleep with me, or he's, watching the nature on the video as I'm doing it, but he's there with it. And I would say that's been the most profound thing that I'm learning now, that I'm sure when you're little, when your kids were little, this was not being talked about, which is like, have your kids involved in your wellness practices. Like, let them see you sit down and journal and breathe heavy. Like Cairo, he's 1 year old. He walks around, he'll go, he knows how to take a deep breath already.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, again, Mike, I'm just committed to very humbly learning and messing up along the way, but learning, like, here he comes, learning how to be a mom and be a mom who still takes really good care of herself and honors herself too.
That's awesome. I know when my kids were little, that stuff was one, I wasn't even in this space when my kids were little. And so now it's been kind of this like pendulum swing, but that was so cute. You were talking about the breath because I've had to teach one of my sons because he plays sports and he doesn't breathe deep enough. And I'm all the time like, breathe deeper. And so one of his teammates this summer was picking on him because he was like, well, your mom always tells you to breathe deep. And he goes, well, that's what she does for a living, is she teaches people how to breathe and how to take care of themselves. And he's like, so why wouldn't he teach me? Like, he totally went to bat for me. And I was like, yes, it was like mom moment. And I was like, but I was like, we really do need to involve our kids more and teach them these practices, and that if they come and go at times, because that's just the nature of life, and you can't spend the hour and you can't spend the 20 minutes or whatever it is, that's okay. Just do it even for a little bit. Do it
Mhm.
for 5 minutes. If you got 5 minutes, go in the bathroom, shut the door, whatever you got to do. Take those moments that you can take care of yourself. So I love that you have come to that full circle of just staying in the present and involving him. It's beautiful to watch him, because you'll see him sometimes when we've been in group things and he'll come in and he's like, you can see him breathing, and he'll do like cute little stuff. And so Cairo's so super cute with that. So let me ask, like, is there any programs, services, any opportunities like to travel that you got coming up that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, we're
Oh,
working on some stuff. I just went to Austin, Texas to hang out with Lindsay, and we like totally laid a foundation for where we're going. So travel, yes, would love to travel with anybody that's interested. If you go to themedicineconnective.com, that's all the international travel. And there's a place where you can book a call if you ever want to just chat with me about fears, questions, anything. Um, what else? We have a trip in Moab in September. I have my new journal coming out this month in just a couple of weeks. So it's going to be available on Amazon. It's called Space for Everything. So it's a journal that goes along with your like daily practices with little journal prompts. So that's helpful. And then what we're doing right now. So this is February 1st today when we're recording this, but whenever you hear this at some point, we will have our free community ready. And within that free community, there's going to be a lot of breath classes, resources, guest teachers. We have a whole wellness professional network. So different ways you can be supported through nutrition, Reiki, remote healing, everything that can help you in this certain like physical healing aspect. Yeah, that's it. And I'm just here doing things, always thinking of new things, and
That Leo in you, you know. Awesome. Well, audience, we will put all in the information on those places that you can connect with Danielle in the show notes. So they will be there for you and the link to find that journal. One of the more questions that I have for you. Oh, there's that sweet boy. Here, Cairo. Hi, sweet.
Say hi.
Hi there. He's so cute. So I have one last question for you before we end this episode. And I ask all of my guests this question. If in a year I walk up to you with a champagne bottle or your drink of choice, what are we going to be celebrating?
It's gonna be at my wedding.
Ooh, cool.
Just a very like 3D grounded thing that I am excited for. So yeah, you and I'll be toasting at my wedding, and maybe that's the trip you take for yourself with me. Like you just come to my wedding.
Yeah. Is it going to be a domestic or international wedding?
I don't know yet. We need to get him to put a ring on it first, but
Well, we'll be pushing him to do that. So, hey,
send
Kyra,
it out
tell
into the
your
ethers,
dad to
everyone.
clue in with the ring here.
Yeah, everybody message Jerome
Yeah.
right now and say you better put a ring on that fine ass lady.
Yeah, well, I want to interview him in the future too. So I will.
Oh, please,
I'll,
yeah.
I'll drop the hint down because man, he's an amazing artist and creative. So I want definitely to chat with him in the future. But audience, I do appreciate you listening in, learning more about Danielle and the tools that she uses and the amazing ways that she's rooted herself in her practices with her family and just in the whole healing spectrum of not only herself but how she helps her community. So if you're interested in connecting with her, please do so. If you're interested in connecting with me and learning more about this podcast or learning more about soul contracts, please do reach out to me in the show notes where you can find all my information as well. And let's tune in next week for the next episode. So we'll see you then. Thank you.